Welcome to the Fabric Fondle at Cottonweed's Quilt Shop in Freeport, Maine. Today we're going to talk about string quilts, do a little touching, a little learning about what they are. It's going to be a fun time today on the Fondle. Here are some examples of string quilts. What is a string quilt, you may ask? Well, they're a great way to use up all those skinny little scraps you have hanging around from trimming things. They get their name from the strips of fabric that we use for the piecing. These are the strings. Okay, each of these colors. String, 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 string. All you need to make a string quilt are strings. So here's some strips of random fabrics I have from trimming things or whatever else. And you need something to be the foundation. In this case, I also had some random squares of this fabric, but the foundation can be anything. It can be muslin, it can be paper piecing foundation sheets. In the olden days, people used phone book pages, newspaper, anything that can just be what it says, a foundation, something that you can sew your strings onto. So like if we look at these, here are my strings. There's my foundation pieces, this blue piece. That's the back of these squares here. You can actually see, if you use a fun printed fabric like I did for my foundation, I left the middle exposed here, so you can see my foundation piece. You don't always have to do that, especially if you're using muslin or something that is not as fun as this one. So you need strings and something for your foundation. And of course you need a sewing machine and thread and all that, all your usual sewing supplies. These are super fast, super fun. You can get creative with them. Although they're called string quilts, you could really use these blocks for anything. So if these, and you can cut them to any size. So these happen to be, I believe, 5-inch squares. Yep. Could make them bigger and use it to make a tote bag out of. You can make a whole quilt out of one of these, putting them together in fun ways. These two I've already pieced together. But that could be a block in a quilt. Ooh, nice. Or I could sew the 4 of these together and use it as the front of a tote bag. Huh? The possibilities are really endless. You can make it any size. You can make it into a rectangle. You can use it really in any pattern as whatever size pieces you need for the pattern. Pretty swift, I think. I think string quilts are so fun because I'm using up all these. I mean, come on, who doesn't have all these pieces laying around their sewing room? This is, I mean, I have more than this. This just happens to be the pile I'm showing you. But we can use up all our scraps. And they are quick because they really don't have to be straight. They don't have to be cut any certain way, like on the grain or anything. They're being sewed to a foundation, so you don't have to worry about any stretching. Doesn't have to match. I mean, check out this scrappy fun. And you can keep the foundation on there. Like this foundation is not coming off. I'm not going to rip it out. You can if you want to, if you use paper. You could rip the paper out after you're done sewing. But if you're using muslin or a fabric, just keep it on there. Let's do some sewing. Here's my foundation piece. I used a nice bright blue so you could see it against the table, but I could use muslin. I could use anything as a foundation. I've laid a strip across the center-ish. Doesn't have to be exact. That's what's great about string quilting. Doesn't have to be exact. So I have my first strip. Just make sure it covers the whole foundation part. Doesn't matter if it overhangs. We're going to trim it later. And then take a second strip. I'm going to make mine scrappy, so I'm just grabbing anything random. Let's see, here we go. I'm going to take this strip, I'm going to put it right sides together with my first strip. Okay, right sides together, my first 2 strips. I didn't pin anything, I didn't label anything, I didn't draw any lines, just putting them across somewhat the middle of my foundation, you do want to work from the center out, center-ish out. So I'm going to sew these two together using, you know, a 1/4 inch-ish seam allowance. No big whoop if it's not. Ooh, starting her up. Here we go. All right, here we go. I'm going to open these guys up and I'm going to finger press to that. There we go. I've got my first 2 strips of my string quilt. Now I'm just going to keep building. I've got another scrap here. I'm going to put it right sides together. Let's see. Actually, I might put it with the red. Right sides together with the red piece. So you can build out either way across your foundation. Okay, right sides together. Now I'm going to sew this. Note that my strings are not all the same width. Doesn't matter. Unless it's the look you want. Whoa, press her foot down. Oh, it is down. Whew, mini heart attack. We're okay. I just finger pressed it open. Look at us building a string. It's more of a string block right now than a string quilt, because who knows what I'll do with it. All right, let's find another scrap. Okay, I'm going to put this right sides together. Right here. Nice, let's sew. So I'm just going to keep building in this way, adding strips to each end until I get the whole foundation covered with strips. All right, we're almost covered. I'm going to put one more strip here and one more strip there, just to make sure the whole foundation is covered. And then we'll talk about how to trim it. Here we are, my whole foundation is covered. Can't even see it. Here it is on the back. You can see all my stitching lines. Most of them aren't even straight. Doesn't matter. So we're going to trim now. All right, so here's the back of my piece. Now as far as trimming goes, some folks make the foundation piece bigger than what they want their ultimate size to be, and then they trim it down. I happen to have 5-inch squares of this foundation piece, and I want it to be 5 inches. So I'm just going to use the blue as a guide for the trimming. In other words, I'm just going to put the ruler right up against my foundation, and I'm going to trim right there. This is where having a rotating cutting mat is quite handy, because you can just trim up all the way around. Spin, spin, spin. Mine is at home and I'm at the store, so I do not have the rotator. So I'll have to do it manually. I'll be okay. Thanks for asking. So I'm going to start by... Sorry, I'm not a very shaky camera holder. I will try not to move so much. I will be trimming this first side up. There we go. Now I'm going to reposition the ruler, and I'm going to trim the next side. Same thing, just lining it up with my foundation. But ideally, I would have made my foundation maybe a little bigger, like maybe 5.5 or 6 inches, and then I could really square it up. But I'm confident that this is 5 inches. Look at that. Beautiful. 5 inches. That's pretty square. Alright, so here I am. I'm just going to trim this side now. And in the same manner, I will now trim the other 2 sides. Alright, let's see how she looks. Oh, look how cute! Isn't that fun? I love string quilts. And like I mentioned before, you don't necessarily have to make a quilt out of this. You can use it for any project that calls for a certain size piece. Just make your foundation the size that you need and string along. So many possibilities. Thanks for joining us on the Fabric Fondle.